and welcome to another video. And for once, it seems like for the longest time, it's been like a couple months since I've been able to actually talk about a game, because there's been so much drama going on in the video game industry between, you know, different, just so many different situations and the whole Gamergate 2 fiasco. And it's good to finally sit down and talk about a game for once. Unfortunately, the game I'm going to talk about is not very good. And if you could see from the title of the video, yeah, it's a fucking disappointing game. So let's just go ahead and we'll dive right into it today. So I'm talking about the 2024 release of Alone in the Dark. This came out back in March. I did not buy it at launch. I will give full disclosure. I paid $8 for my copy of this game. $8. And I just happened to find a really good deal on Amazon one day. I had some credit already. I had a gift card. So when it was all said and done, it cost me out of pocket $8. And I'll be honest, I'm glad I didn't pay more than $8 for this game. It's not very good. And it's disappointing because I think I felt like I was inclined to play this game and talk about it on the channel because I love horror games. You guys know that. You know, the channel's all about horror stuff. I mean, for fuck's sake, I'm wearing a Friday the 13th t-shirt. So like, you guys know I love horror. And I love horror video games. And I was really hoping that this would finally be the comeback for Alone in the Dark, because it's been so long since we've had a good Alone in the Dark game. I'd honestly say the last good Alone in the Dark game was the New Nightmare, which was out in like what, the turn of the century? Wasn't it like 99, 2000, 2001, like around that era? I remember it came out on PS1, and I think there's a Dreamcast port of it as well. I have it for PS1, but yeah, that's probably the last time I think there was a solid attempt that was actually decent at this franchise. There was that terrible it's either 2008 or 2009 game that was very fucking bad. I remember playing it. It came out right after that shitty fucking movie. There was another thing in the 2010s that was kind of like a multiplayer thing that nobody played. And then this series has laid dormant for a while. So I was excited. It was ripe for the picking to make a new Alone in the Dark in 2024. And they had a lot of goodwill with this game. You know, they got David Harbour, they got Jodie Comer, whatever her name is. So they got two good leads in this game, and you can pick to play as either one of these characters. David Harbour obviously is playing the famous Edward Carnby. I like the setting of it. It has this like deep South setting. I believe it's the 1920s, the 1930s, somewhere around there. It's just the major sin that this game commits, and the reason why I cannot recommend it, other than the fact that it's short as hell. One playthrough this game is roughly about 4 to 5 hours. It's just boring, and I think that's the biggest sin that any horror game can make, is if it's just fucking boring. And this game is 100% a snooze fest. One of the only enemy types in the game, there's a little bit of enemy variety, but not really. But the one that you'll see more often than not are like these like green swamp thing looking monsters, and they kind of come out of nowhere at first and without really much explanation. That's a lot. I'll say that's a lot of this game. Like, shit happens in the beginning without a lot of explanation, and then when you do get some explanation, it's not very good. I'll say this, like, I love David Harbour. I mean, of course I do. I'm a huge Stranger Things fan. I think anything that I've ever seen that dude pop up in, he's really, really good. Obviously, he's been, you know, around the block when it comes to his acting career, and I think he does give a good performance here with what he's given. But the problem is, what he's given is not very good. I did not do a playthrough as Jodie Comer. It doesn't change the story like really that much at all. You're basically playing through the same game again, just as a different character. So like dialogue might be a little bit different. The other thing I'll say is like way too many fucking puzzles. Like, you pretty much the entire game is set in this mansion. So kind of get like, at first I was like, oh, this gives me like Resident Evil 1 vibes. That's really cool. Like this will be something I'll really enjoy. Now, unfortunately, it's just not. Like, it goes from puzzle after puzzle after puzzle. None of the puzzles are particularly challenging. A lot of them are that standard, like, you have a bunch of pieces, you have to move them around together to make the image match. There's a lot of puzzles involving clocks in this game, and it just it's boring. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, it was a struggle for me to get through any part of the game. And I get the whole point of that, because 4 to 5 hours, you know, they want you to play as the other character, so that, you know, doubles the value of the game. But even still, to put this thing out for $60, and maybe the most you're going to get out of it is 10 to 12 hours, I don't know, man. And that 10 to 12 hours, I'll be frank, is not very good. Yes, there is gunplay in the game. The gunplay is your standard third person over the shoulder. The one thing I'll say that's really going for the game, it looks great visually, and it runs very, very well. I ran the game. I was playing it on PS5. All the footage you're seeing is from the PS5 version. It runs great. Like, I think that's the biggest thing I'll say about it, is I think the game runs great, and it does look really good visually. But again, like, you could say the same, you could literally pick that up, say the same thing about Hellblade a couple weeks ago. Like, yeah, Hellblade is one of the most amazing looking games ever played, but I just didn't care for it. You know, I have the same problem here, only the difference is this game is actually, like, actively boring as fuck. So, and that's the biggest sin as a horror game. And, you know, now we've learned, and one of the reasons I held off on making this video too is that, you know, this game unfortunately did not sell. It tanked the studio behind it. That's always unfortunate to hear. And in this case, there wasn't any kind of, like, you know, sweet baby or any kind of, like, injecting a message or anything in this game. There's none of that in this game. It's just, it's a boring fucking video game that, you know, in a genre that is arguably never boring. That's the problem. Like, to take a horror game and make it boring is just such a fucking sin for that genre. And that's the same, I would say the same thing about horror movies in general. Like, you watch one that's boring, boy, that's not, you know, that's not a good thing. I recently, and you guys can see on the channel, I did a short of it, but I recently watched the remake of The Strangers, one of my favorite, you know, horror movies of the 2010s, or no, I should say the 2000s, late 2000s. And the remake is needless. It's boring. The acting is 10 times worse. It loses all of the tension. And that's when sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, if you're going to remake something, the whole point of remaking something is to try something different or make it better. And I don't think Alone in the Dark here has any of that, unfortunately. And it's a real shame, because again, they got a good cast of people. They obviously put money into this. Again, the game looks well. I can't say it doesn't play well. It plays just fine for a horror game, but unfortunately, it's not a great game. And it sucks that the studio, you know, was shut down or whatever, but hopefully those people land on their feet and they get jobs elsewhere. But is this the final nail in the coffin for Alone in the Dark? Or, like, are we just going to take this thing and put it on the shelf for another 10 years and then let another studio take a jab at it in a decade when it's, you know, dead? I don't know. I'd love to know, what's the plan here? Was there a plan? Like, did they have, like, a little master book somewhere where it was like, okay, if this is successful, we'll do a Alone in the Dark 2 or 3. Like, I would be very curious. But yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't pan out. It's not good. It's not the horror game you're looking for. So, really just tremendously disappointing. I cannot recommend it. I mean, again, I paid $8 for it, and, like, it's going to go on my shelf and be a game that sits in my PlayStation collection, but I probably honestly never touch it again. So, anyways, I'd love to know in the comments below, guys, if you guys played Alone in the Dark, do you guys like this franchise? Let me know. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.